Magic at Nauseam, magic at Nauseam. Nobody likes us in real life, so why would they watch our show? Nobody knows.
Hello, and welcome to Magic Ad Nauseam. I'm your host, Kevin.
I'm Melissa.
She's the other host. Her name is Melissa. Today we're going to discuss the new Battle for Zendikar event deck, Ultimate Sacrifice. We're going to start by going over what's in the deck, what its synergies are, how the deck works. Then we're going to talk a little bit about our general opinions of the deck, whether we liked it, whether we didn't like it, whether we think it's worth buying or not, how we might improve it. And then finally, we'll include some links to us playing the deck against various decks that we have.
So let's take a quick look at what the deck includes and how to play it. Like the name implies, Ultimate Sacrifice is all about sacrificing our creatures to gain some kind of benefit. The cards can be broken up into three major categories: cards that create creatures to be sacrificed, cards that give us a way to sacrifice those creatures, and cards that give us some kind of benefit when we sacrifice our creatures or when our creatures are put into the graveyard. One of the creatures we play for the purpose of sacrificing it is Blister Pod. Blister Pod is a 1/1 for 1 green mana, and when Blister Pod goes to the graveyard from play, you put a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion in play. So what this does is it allows us to have 2 sack targets for the cost of 1 card, in fact for the cost of 1 mana. In addition to that, that second creature that comes out is a Scion, so it could sacrifice itself. Another card that we play for the purpose of being sacrificed is Hangerback Walker. It's an XX that you play for double X mana, and when it goes to the graveyard from play, you put X flying Thopter tokens into play, so you could potentially get a whole lot of creatures out of this one card. Now let's talk about some of our sacrifice outlets. Evolutionary Leap is one of the main engine cards in the deck. It costs a colorless and a green to bring out. It's an enchantment, and once it's out, you can pay a green mana to sacrifice any creature that you control and draw cards until you draw a creature card. Once you draw a creature card, that card goes into your hand, and all of the cards drawn go in the bottom of your library. So this allows you to get really good card draw, basically, always drawing to cards that are useful to you, while at the same time getting any sacrifice triggers you might have in play. The other card which plays a super big role as a sack outlet is Nantuko Husk. Nantuko Husk is a 2/2 for 3 mana, and you can sacrifice a creature to it to have it gain +2/+2 until end of turn. This may not sound like a lot right away, but given that your creatures are so cheap, and you have cards like Rogue's Passage to make it unblockable, this card can end games for you. Let's look at a few of the cards that give us global bonuses whenever a creature is put in the graveyard. The biggest one, the one that I find to be the most important, is Zulaport Cutthroat. What he does is anytime any of your creatures are removed from the battlefield and put into your graveyard, you gain a life and each opponent loses a life. With combined with things like Evolutionary Leap, this can win you games basically just by cycling through your creatures over and over again, because this deck has a lot of cheap creatures. Another big one is Smothering Abomination. Smothering Abomination, every time you sacrifice a creature, you do have to explicitly sacrifice it. It can't just die. But whenever you sacrifice a creature, you draw a card. So this just keeps you full of cards if you manage to get it out as one of your late game threats. So these categories cover all but the last 5 non-land cards. And 4 of those last 5 non-land cards have one other thing in common. They all use the graveyard as a resource, which does synergize with the sacrifice theme a little bit, because you are putting things in the graveyard and then you can use them as resources later. For example, Tasigur, the Golden Fang, would normally cost 6 mana, 5 colorless and 1 black. But every one of those colorless, instead of paying it, you can exile a card from your graveyard. Finally, there is Warden of the First Tree. I don't think anybody knows why he was put in this deck. I mean, he's a good card, he's a mythic even, but he really doesn't synergize with anything. There's nothing great about him in this deck, he's just kind of there. The line base is pretty straightforward. It's a 2-color deck, so there are 9 cards in there to fix mana. Those are Jungle Hollow, Evolving Wilds, and Lenore Wastes. Then there's another, whole bunch of swamps and forests just to pad things out. And finally, there's 2 Rogue's Passages, which are used to make a creature unblockable. It takes 4 mana of any color to do that, and it's great on things like Nantuko Husk, just to make him unblockable and then sack your whole army and make him super big so he can swing in to kill your opponent. I think they did a really good job with the sideboard. Caustic Caterpillar is obvious, really good synergy with the deck. It's a 1/1 for 1. It has a sacrifice ability. If they're running a lot of artifacts and enchantments, it's an obvious include, because you can sacrifice it, get your sacrifice triggers, and get rid of whatever your opponent has, Ultimate price is very good. It's a creature destruction spell. It's a little weaker now that monocolor is less of a thing, and there's a lot of colorless Eldrazi running around, but it's still super strong. Great creature kill spell. Jade Offshoot is basically a defender. You put it in against aggro decks like Red Deck Wins, just to kind of gain you a little bit of life and hopefully hold off any swarms of goblins they may have. Cranial Archive is to compete against other graveyard decks, especially delve decks and things like that. You can exile their graveyard, makes your life a lot easier. And Duress is just in case you're against a deck that you know has a lot of instants and sorceries that'll really ruin your day. You can sideboard those in to get rid of them.
So Melissa,
Yeah.
what do you think of Ultimate Sacrifice, the event deck for Battle for Zendikar?
Okay.
It's okay?
Yeah.
That's not what you were saying earlier.
No, I don't really
I
like
heard
it.
you were trashing it earlier.
I don't like
you
it.
said it's poop.
I did say it was poop.
You said Zilliport Cutthroat is just a words blood artist,
I was
and
just
you don't
trying to
like
be
him at
nice.
all.
I like blood artists.
No, you like blood artist, but you don't like Zilliport Cutthroat.
I'd rather have a
I
blood
think you don't
artist.
like him because the few games I won, it was all because of him, because it doesn't have any good way to swing in and kill you. It just relies on Zilliport Cutthroat to
But-
hopefully ping you for one over and over again.
Blood artist is better if you're doing multiplayer because it works on everyone.
That is very true.
So it's better.
Zilliport Cutthroat pings everybody too.
But it's your creatures that die.
It's only for your creatures dying.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So he's not overall. He's probably not as good as blood artist. I agree.
I will defend blood artists. I like it.
So, would you advise anybody to buy this deck?
If they wanted to play standard, and
Okay.
they didn't have anything else, and they had $20, knock yourself out.
So, my opinion of the deck is a little bit more optimistic. I think it's actually a very strong deck. I think a lot of the cards are good. Zilliport Cutthroat is great inside the shell. He's a powerhouse. And obviously, Hangerback Walker is $15 by itself. It's a card that sees play all over the place, even not in standard. But it's one of the standard powerhouses right now. So it has there's a few things that go in for the deck, in my opinion. I think one, it is a decent standard deck out of the box. You can play it against most other standard decks, and if you'd have to get pretty lucky to beat the top tier decks. But if you got really lucky, you could probably beat
You're not
them.
going to read the top tier decks with it.
I don't think you know that.
Okay.
But I mean, it would be an uphill battle. It's not a top tier deck. It's a $20 event deck. But there are similar decks that have done pretty well. A lot of people say if you buy 2 copies of the deck, you get 2 Hangerback Walkers, you get 2 of most of the good cards, and you get 2 of all of the good cards in it. So you can put them together and then make a good deck with just that if you wanted to. I agree that it will not get you a top tier standard deck. So if you're interested in being super competitive at Friday Night Magic, it's probably not a good way to go. I think it's the thing I think is great about it is, well, one, it has a lot of valuable cards. It's their first time ever doing mythics in one of these, and I feel like you get a lot of value out of it in general. If you add up the individual prices of the cards, you'd have to want the cards.
Right.
But if you added up the individual prices of the cards, they're well over $20 worth of cards currently. Those prices will probably fall. I think the event deck will probably be printed a lot, and then as people buy it, the prices of those singles will also go down. But, they were high, and they were high because they were good. So there's a lot of singles that, if you play standard, these singles are very good, and they're going to be very good probably for the next year or two until they rotate out. Once they rotate out, a lot of the prices might drop just because only a few of them are probably viable in older formats. So I think one thing the deck is really good for is new players. I feel like it has a lot of complex synergies that might be a little hard for new players to pick up on, but overall, it gives a pretty good taste of what Magic is all about.
I think it's a little too complex for like a beginner. For a super beginner, you probably want something really basic just to learn all the rules.
Yep.
And not get into like micromanaging everything.
I don't
It's a
totally
little bit
disagree with that.
much.
I will say the one thing this does, which I worry a lot of super beginner decks might not do, is if you go too easy for a beginner deck, it's hard to tell what makes Magic fun. Because what makes Magic fun, at least for me, and I think for most people who play the game, isn't playing 2/2 bears on turn 2 and being like, I have a 2/2, I attack you. It's the cool interactions between the cards.
But I think
And
if
so
you're
those interactions are complex,
right.
but this is this does put on display how those interactions might
Right,
work.
but like if you're used to having played other card games or something, then I think you'll pick up the rules really fast, and then this deck, I guess, would be better for that.
Yeah.
But if you're learning, the very beginnings of how to play Magic, you kind of want the super easy
You want mono green,
mono green, yeah.
mono green Stompy or
So
something.
that you learn all the steps and how things go in order and the stack and all that kind of stuff.
I don't disagree with that, and
And
I guess it's true.
maybe introducing things that are a little more micromanaging is maybe for someone who's played other card games and kind of gets how it goes.
Yeah, so you might be. So what you're kind of saying is maybe you'd be better off with an intro deck or a deck that's a little bit more meant
For super beginner,
for
like
super beginner,
never
yeah.
played before.
I guess I don't disagree. I mean, obviously this is targeted at those people who are about to want to get serious about Magic, about to want to start in Friday Night Magic. I think it wouldn't be. I don't think you're gonna win much of Friday Night Magic, but it's an okay Friday Night Magic deck at least to start with, and especially if you upgrade it a little bit. And like you said, they would know the rules a little bit then. So yeah, it really does depend on the level of the player probably. But I don't know. It might depend on the age too. Like if you're somebody who's used to playing games a lot, I think a lot of the synergies aren't going to be that hard to pick up. But mono green Stompy is super fun too, and that is also an awesome way to learn.
No, it's not.
It's so good. You get your Strangleroot Geist out on turn 2. It's so good. Equip a Rancor. Oh man, life doesn't get better.
I disagree. It can get a lot.
We're off topic, but anyway. So if you had to give it a rating, like A+, 70%, I don't know. You can use whatever scale you want. How many magical ponies it gets on the magical pony grading scale?
I have no idea. If we did it at stars,
Okay,
what would be
stars.
1 star and what would be 5 stars? Because you need to scale.
Yeah, I think that's up to you to decide. A 5-star.
I give it a 2 then.
5-star, I guess, would be Ad Nauseam, because that's the deck that you like the most.
I
even
do.
though you've never
It'd
played
be
it.
fun to play. See, that's a fun deck.
And so Ad Nauseam would be 5, and 1 would be mono green, I guess, for you.
Yeah, probably.
2?
Oh, we'll give it a 2.
Because I think you like the style of the deck. You just don't like the actual.
Well, I
build
have
of
a
the
deck that has a lot of like graveyard recursion and
You have,
sacrificing things.
it's very similar. I mean, it runs water.
But it's mono black,
So, yeah.
and it does much better. But
We'll
it's,
see
it's
about
not
that.
standard,
Maybe I'll play that
so.
one later. Maybe I'll play that one later. Maybe I'll beat it.
Yeah.
Probably not. But we might play later. I don't know. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I think I would give it a 4. I think my scale, is probably from. I don't freaking know what would be on the bottom of my scale. I know the top is probably Tron or Slivers. Slivers. But yeah, I think it's not a good deck out of the box. I think it is great for the purpose it's supposed to serve. I think there's a lot of value in it, and I think it's a very fun deck to play. Like I bought it with pretty low expectations, just because I bought these kind of decks before, and they were kind of fun, but I didn't feel great about them. This one, I enjoyed the synergies. I don't have a Graveyard Recursion deck, so it was not a totally new deck for me, but it was new enough that it was interesting, and I really liked how they built it. Felt like a lot of thought went into it. They did a good job of balancing, putting really good cards in, but not putting so many good cards in that the price was well over $20. So I felt like they did a really good job building it. I thought it was a lot of fun to play with. So it gets a 4 out of 5 in my book. Could be better, room for improvement, but great product.
Okay.
So our average is 3, I guess. Which is average, I guess. I don't know. Woo, go team. 4 magical ponies out of 6.5. I don't know.
So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how the deck might be improved or changed. One thing I wanted to point out is this weekend was Battle for Zendikar Pro Tour. And it actually, I don't think it got top 8, but it did pretty well. A bunch of people played it. They actually played a black-blue version, but a lot of the cards are the same. I included a picture here. I'll include a link to that YouTube video explaining how that deck worked, but it was basically mostly all in on Nantuko Husk, swinging in for lots of damage. It used Whirler Rogues to make them unblockable, which is kind of neat. But that deck is very expensive. I mean, it runs 4 Liliana Heretical Healer and 4 Hangerback Walkers, which each run $15 to $20, I think, at this point. So I really wanted to look at a way to improve the current deck and not spend a whole lot of money on it. So this still is not going to be, top level competitive, you wouldn't want to bring this thing to a pro tour, but by putting in extra, I put my limit at about $20, you can potentially get a pretty good deck. So the picture here are the cards that I decided to remove from the deck. There's some tough cuts here. I mean, Warden of the First Tree was obvious just because he didn't have any major synergies. Corpse Wife just was too expensive to get online and didn't really offer more than other token generators might offer me. I cut a Catacomb Sliver just because its effect, having too many copies of it isn't that useful. Vampiric Rites, I just liked Evolutionary Elite more. Evolving Wilds are great. It was a hard choice between them and the Jungle Hollows. I just chose them because I like have the option late game, because there is a lot of green and a lot of black that you need. You really need the green to hit your Evolutionary Elite repeatedly. Rot Chandlers are very good. They were a pretty hard cut. Because they're 2 cost for 1 and they don't really sack well, they're just a little too hard to turn on. They tend to die. I found they died too quickly, basically. Probably by far, I would say the hardest cut was Whisperwood Elemental, because he has a lot of good synergies with his deck. His sacrifice ability synergizes well with the deck. He puts out a token every turn. It was just 5 mana is really expensive for the deck, and getting him turned on at 5 mana didn't seem worth it to me. And his sacrifice ability is great, but it doesn't work on token creatures, which is a lot of what you have. So these are the cards I decided to add in. I feel like Zulaport Cutthroat, Nantuko Husk, and Evolutionary Leap. I've talked earlier about how good I thought they were. I mean, it's pretty obvious why I'm putting them in. I mean, you could probably go with 3 Nantuko Husk or 2 Evolutionary Leap. I'm upping those to 4 and 3 respectively. But, they're just very good cards inside this shell. Merciless Executioner and Fleshback Marauder are almost the same thing. They're both 3-drop 3/1s, and when they come into play, you and your opponent both have to sacrifice a creature. So in this shell, they do a lot for you. You can sacrifice something that's not worth very much, plus you get all your sacrifice triggers from it, and they very well might have to sacrifice a creature that's very important to them. From Beyond is kind of neat. It basically puts out a token for you every turn. You can also use its secondary ability to sack it and go seeking for an Eldrazi. Mostly I didn't find I needed to do that, but it's there if you need it. I added another Smothering Abomination. I just felt like he was really good at the top of the curve to kind of draw you lots of cards. Hooded Hydra. Hooded Hydra is not as good as Hangerback Walker, but he's like a 50-cent card, whereas Hangerback Walker is like $15. And Hooded Hydra serves very much the same purpose. You have to pay 2 green mana and then X to get a XX creature, and when it dies, you put X snake creature tokens into play, which are 1/1s. So it has the same thing where you're basically having XX, that when it dies you get X creature tokens. It's actually for high amounts of mana, so at the top of your curve it starts to become cheaper than Hangerback Walker and a better value than Hangerback Walker. At the bottom of your curve, Hangerback Walker is definitely better. Hangerback Walker has a bunch of other advantages. Its tokens fly, which is really nice because it means they can get in for damage. You can play it on turn 2. With this you really can't play on turn 2. Things like that. But, this guy is still decent in this shell just because it's a sack shell, and anytime you can get a creature out that you can sack for lots of triggers, basically, it's pretty powerful. By far, I think the most powerful card that is added here is Bloodsoaked Champion. Bloodsoaked Champion is awesome because you can basically attack with him, sacrifice him, and then pay 2 mana and bring him right back to the battlefield. In fact, you can even do crazy things because Raid is not a normal creature cast. You can do crazy things like sack Bloodsoaked Champion during combat when Nantuko Husk is attacking, pay 2 mana, bring him back, and then sack him again immediately to Nantuko Husk again to give Nantuko Husk even more pluses. The Llanowar Wastes are in there just because we need more good mana. Llanowar Wastes are the best option for green-black. We do cut 2 mana total, so I'm going a little later on mana. That's partly because I dropped all of my 5-drops, so there were only 2 of them, but I dropped my 2 5-drops, and in general the curve is slightly lower. I found it worked pretty well, but it's up to you. 23 or 24 is certainly fine too. But yeah, this is what I came up with for less than $20 and that I thought would be good, and we recorded some videos that you guys can see now. I'm going to link them right here at the end. So thank you guys so much for watching the first episode of Magic ad Nauseam. Melissa and I don't really know what we're doing yet, but we're having a lot of fun, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, give us a like, give us a subscribe, leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought. I mean, obviously, we're new at this, so any comments are useful. And yeah, have a great week. See you later.